The single most important quality in a great researcher is to be lucky and to find topics that are interesting and worth working on and that yield to investigation. So, early in my career, I studied many topics that were dead ends. And when I started to study matching markets, one question led to another, and I'm still studying them. So I think it's important to have a question that's important enough to keep your interest for a long time, but also that yields to tools that you like to use so that you can work hard.
Please welcome Professor Alvin Roth, Professor of Economics at Stanford University and our distinguished Nobel laureate, awarded the 2012 Nobel Prize in Economics. Professor Roth's groundbreaking work in market design and matching theory has literally saved lives by optimizing complex systems such as the kidney exchange networks used worldwide.
My book that's forthcoming in May, called Moral Economics, is about controversial markets and the attempts to ban them or regulate them. And I think the main idea of the book is that markets need social support to work well, but so do bans on markets. And often bans that don't have adequate social support give rise to active black markets. And we have to think about that too, rather than ignoring them. And so when you talk about things like kidneys and whether you can be generous to donors, it's helpful to remember that there are millions of deaths every year because there aren't enough transplants for the people who need them. Similarly, a more familiar subject is whether we can pay for blood plasma. And there are lots of countries in the world where it's considered inappropriate, maybe immoral, to pay for blood plasma. But one reason why many countries feel that they don't need to pay plasma donors is that they can buy plasma from the United States. Otherwise, there would be the same kinds of shortages of plasma that there are of kidneys. I think the big moral idea of the book is that things that we're morally obliged to do have to be things that we can do. The 2007 paper where I talked about repugnance as a constraint on market. And I talked about whether kidney donors could be compensated and that controversy. One of the compliments I got that I treasure the most is people on both sides of that argument, people who thought that we should be able to pay kidney donors and people who thought that we should not, said things to me to the effect that they said, I thought you presented both sides very fairly, but I could tell that you agree with me. I took as a compliment, I try to present both sides fairly, but I also have opinions and sometimes I have ideas about how we should proceed, and so I don't hesitate to offer my own ideas. Now, my understanding of bans on surrogacy is they're meant to protect vulnerable people, and the vulnerable people who they're meant to protect are women who might become surrogate mothers, who might bear a baby for someone else. But if the ban is going to fail, then there are going to be babies. And there's no one more vulnerable than a newborn baby. If you're the family court, your concern is not what's moral and what's not moral, but where should this baby go home? And a natural answer is the baby should go home with her parents. And so in Spain and Germany and France, the family courts have made pathways for parents to adopt their own babies. So the effect of bans on surrogacy in those places is it puts obstacles to people who can't afford to come to the United States, but not to people who can. And that's not clearly the intention of the law. So I think when we see bans that don't have sufficient social support to be effective, we have to ask again, what is it that we're trying to do, and are we happy with what we have done, or should we do it differently? There are two ways to get around a ban on surrogacy. One is to travel to some place where it's legal, and the other is to deal with a black market run by criminals. There's a case of the law. German women who have trouble getting pregnant can go to Spain and have in vitro fertilization, and then they look just like other pregnant German women. So there are some bans that are just very hard to enforce, but present barriers that poor people may not be able to overcome, but rich people can. So I think that's one of the things we have to think about. Is it our intention just to put up barriers so that only the rich can do something that we find controversial? We certainly shouldn't compel any woman to be a surrogate. But it seems to me that we have to consider what are the consequences of our policies, what outcomes they actually produce, and do we like those better than other outcomes we could have if we legalized but regulated the market? So there are people who want to be surrogates, and we have to protect them, of course, from bad outcomes that might come from bad contracts. The future is the hardest thing to predict, but when you talk about economic impact, one thing we think about is labor markets. 100 years ago in the United States, half of the labor force worked in agriculture. And then lots of mechanization came along, productivity increases in agriculture. And today, only 2% of Americans work in agriculture. So I think that AI, like other technological innovations, is going to initiate a sea change in how we deploy our efforts. And Dr. Hinton, one of the early developers of neural nets, famously predicted that radiologists would soon go out of business. Some years ago, he said people shouldn't study radiology anymore because AI was going to take over that part of medicine. And that hasn't been the case. Although AI image recognition has proved very useful for radiology, I think what's becoming extinct is not radiologists, but radiologists who don't use computer aids. One of the things about large language models is they have vast knowledge of texts, of articles, of databases. And so presumably they're going to make it much easier to search for new uses of existing drugs, especially when we understand the pathways and the side effects and things like that. In terms of data, one of the important things in diagnosis for present medicine, as I understand it, is examining the patient. Right? Getting data on what's going on with this person at this time. And so until all of that can be digitized, we're going to need physicians to examine patients and to understand what seem to be the issues. Coming back to the idea of precision medicine, one of the things that AI is good at is combining data sets. And one of the data sets that may be increasingly useful in diagnosis of the future health of individual patients is the health claims data. In the United States, this is insurance claims. And sometimes seeing the claims data, we see this in kidney disease, sometimes seeing the claims data helps identify early stages of chronic kidney disease before they're easily available from other data sources. So thinking about how to regulate who can inspect health data for what purposes will perhaps facilitate the use of the more comprehensive use of various kinds of data. Universities have many missions. One is to generate new knowledge, one is to educate students. I don't think we should think about changing our mission, but we're certainly going to have to adapt our methods to new technology, just as we did when computers became available, right? There was a time when I was in college, a computer was something that lived in a building by itself, and you went with your stacks of IBM cards to serve the computer. But now people carry their computers with them to class, and we've adapted. And I think we're going to have to learn how to teach the use of AI. But our fundamental mission, which is both to train, educate people, and to develop new knowledge, will stay the same. When you work in market design, many markets don't work as well as they should. Regulation is a big part of market design. But one of the things we learn about regulation, just as we learned that we can't always prevent every bad thing with a ban, with regulation you learn that there are holes in your initial regulations that as you see bad things happen in the crevices, you try to fix. If you're a very young student, I think one of the things you have to do to search out what your passion will be and what you should study is to find inspiring teachers. And you shouldn't decide too early. You shouldn't necessarily come out of high school thinking you know what you want to do. You should, at a big university like this, there are things you never heard of, and you should be open to exploring them. especially younger students, to things that might possibly inspire you and that you'd be willing to spend a lot of time pursuing.
这次的这个桥梁计划的这个活动来说的话，我们有很多师生沟通的机会，还有跟我们的那个得主诺贝尔奖得主有很多的交流的机会。这些的话呢，都会鼓励我们年轻人，我们的视野不只在我们的书本上，而且需要更进一步的把这些专长融会贯通之后，应用在我们的整体的社会福祉，还有跟世界的脉动能够做一个串接。我认为对于我们年轻人最大的启发，不要再站在自己本位的角度来做思考，应该要有更多的面向来了解这个世界，如何在这个世界里面能够有一席之地，我想这个是一个最重要的。